are secondaries easy or hard? I think it's the same line of denials, but generally speaking, I'm going to say secondaries are the hardest aspect of VA disability as a whole. And it depends, right? Like your radiculopathy, your nerve damage from your sciatic nerve and your lumbar spine, easy. X-ray, boom, done. Nerve damage in your arms from your cervical strain or shoulder conditions, your elbows or wrists, easy. Why? X-ray, boom, done. All right. Lower back rated at 40% causing depression, show me the X-ray. Okay. That's where secondaries get really difficult. I think the hardest secondary, which is so contradictory to YouTube, is, and I love saying this because it makes people mad. This one I like saying is migraine secondary to tinnitus. Everyone says there's evidence supporting that. Yes, well, guess what? There's more evidence saying the opposite. I think people get so tunnel vision finding one article on Google that says, hey, it's connected, and they completely disregard everything else. And then you're going to find yourself being denied because YouTube told you to claim migraine secondary to tinnitus. It's much, much more difficult than that because you can't X-ray it. And so when veterans are submitting secondary claims, it comes in there's two things they need to do. One, get evidence indicating the connection exists in the first place. So, hey, doc, when I get migraines or when my tinnitus acts up, it really aggravates my migraines. You know, if I'm already having a migraine and then my tinnitus acts up, that migraine symptom exacerbates and I'm done for the day. I can't do anything. Have that conversation with your primary care, not the C&P examiner. Talk about it there too. But if you fail to talk about it with your primary care, it means nothing. Self-reports mean absolutely diddly squat until you're at the Board of Appeals, and that's a whole other thing. Okay, Jason, I'm going to leave it there because I can really go in on what I call stupid secondaries. But leave it there, and then I'm definitely going to have some comments after this.
So the general idea is just secondaries in general. Like what are thoughts on secondaries? So here's my thoughts on secondaries.
Are they easy or hard?
So easy or hard? Well, it depends, right? So it's, again, this world's so nuanced. So here's the thing, is that secondaries can be hard. And I think that what happens sometimes is people will think that they are easier. And so therefore, even if it is truly a service-connected regular condition, they think it's easier to call it a secondary and get it awarded that way versus actually trying to build the nexus. Okay, so your migraines, you might have had them since service, but you got service connected for tinnitus, and then you thought, you know what, it's going to be easier for me to just say it's because of my tinnitus, so therefore I'm going to file as a secondary. Then you get denied, and then that sucks. When meanwhile, you probably should have filed it as a service-connected condition and tried to build the nexus, right? There's certain conditions that it makes sense. You might have to push it to the board eventually, but where it makes sense that it's not listed in your service treatment records, that you self-treated with Motrin, that you got Motrin from a medic or a corpsman, right? And that didn't get annotated anywhere. That as long as you have a current diagnosis and you can get the buddy statements and your own statement and that type of stuff, you could build enough to where the board would probably rule in your favor. The VA may, right? And they should, but they don't always get it right, which is fine. But the point here is that sometimes I think that we as veterans look at our own selves and our own claims process and we go, okay, I have this condition. What's the easiest way for me to get that service connected? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we go the secondary route. So secondaries can be difficult. You made good points there on really trying to make that connection. What I look at is, if it's, I like your X-ray aspect, like your bad back created your pinched nerve, which created this radiculopathy, whatever, right? That's like, it's all connected. It makes sense. You follow the line. When you start moving over into different things like a neurological to an auditory, like your migraines due to tinnitus type of a thing, it's a little harder to draw the line. And especially if you have competing evidence out in the world, that makes it more difficult. I'm a fan of doing this when it comes to secondaries. And I don't know. I think that a lot of us aren't doctors, so we don't even realize that something could be a secondary to something else we have, first of all. So what I suggest people do is take, and this isn't a foolproof plan, it's just a way. It's one of 1,000 different ways to help you navigate your own situation. If you have 7 conditions that your service connected for, take each one of those and plug those in Google and say secondary conditions in there as well. And some of the attorney sites will pop up, some other sites will pop up, the Mayo Clinic may pop up, whatever. And you will see secondary conditions that are likely to result due to whatever your condition is. And if you have one of those, then explore that as an option. Same with medications. Medications have side effects. If you're taking some sort of quirky medication for this condition and you've been taking it for 10 years, you may have this condition, right? Like if we're taking hands full of Motrin, right? Forever, what is it that goes? Your liver? Is it your liver that gets jacked up with Motrin? I can't remember. Or your kidney? Something gets jacked up with Motrin. Your stomach gets jacked up with aspirin, right? So if you're taking a bunch of aspirin to deal with your migraine, well, now you're going to have stomach issues in the future, potentially, right? So now you need to be able to look at these medications and the things that they can cause and leverage that as the secondary, right? Look, what I'll never say is if you believe something to be true, don't file for that. No. If you believe something to be true, then try to build your evidence the best you can and file for it, right? I mean, let the VA say no and take it to the board if you feel as though that's appropriate. I'm not going to discourage anybody from ever filing a claim because that's not what I'm here for. But there is sometimes different avenues and that you can go. You could go service connected versus secondary. And the other thing that I really want to leave this on is secondaries are not easier. All that's happening is that you're moving the nexus aspect from time and service nexus to nexus to another condition. So you still need to build that bridge, right? You can't just say, I have this because of that, period. Here you go, VA. VA is going to be like, where's the proof, right? They need something that correlates the two. Talk with your doctor, like you said, have them annotate that in their records. Have them state on a letter, if they're willing to do so, that it's because of this condition that this condition happened, right? Or the medication from this condition caused this condition. So that's kind of what you want to do, in my opinion. So back to you, Clay. I want to hear your final thoughts on that.
Oh yeah, my final thoughts on secondary is hands down evidence. Evidence. Not a Mayo Clinic article, which is relevant, but what's more relevant is your evidence. The reason I tell this story and I use it as an example is because it's a true story that this person was not happy with me and they probably still hate me. But they left service. A few years after that, they worked construction. They had fallen off and had some head trauma, and that's when they got diagnosed with migraines. And then they went to try to service connect the cause of migraines direct to service and then the cause of migraines to tinnitus. And guess what happened? It was denied. Why? Because of competing evidence. And I'm so glad you said that, Jason. So many people just completely forget about competing evidence, which is competing evidence, by the way, is not good, right? You're trying to build service connection. Competing evidence is taking that away. And so this veteran submitted their private records with their claim. The VA has them. You can clearly see head trauma, migraines, 3 years after service, right? Not going to be service connected, not going to be secondary to tinnitus. There is an avenue in there. That's causation, right? Causation off the table for that veteran. However, there is an avenue for aggravation. And I think that's where people, especially when you're going from system to system, like neurological to auditory, aggravation is really going to come in clutch. So did your tinnitus cause migraines? No. Does it aggravate the condition and make it worse? Maybe. And remember, maybe it's 50%. that is service connected, at least as likely as not. There's so many examples I can, in nuances I can run in through, but overall evidence, medical evidence is absolutely critical for secondaries. Absolutely critical. There are a few secondaries I would submit just with the current diagnosis, like your radiculopathy secondary to lumbar spine. Get the diagnosis, submit the claim. And then there are a few secondaries where you might want to consider that private nexus, like a lumbar spine condition causing depression. I'm telling you right now, if you don't get a Hall of Famer C&P examiner, that will be denied. If you don't get a Hall of Famer C&P examiner for vertigo secondary to tinnitus, that will be denied. It really comes down to medical evidence and that C&P examiner.